Hello, everyone, and good evening. My name is Katie, and I work at The Novel Neighbor, a bookstore based in St. Louis, Missouri, where books, art, and people meet. Tonight, we're honored to host the editors of the short story collection Swordstone Table, Old Legends, New Voices, Swapna Krishna and Jenn Northington. Swapna is a space, technology, and pop culture writer and journalist. Her work has been published at Engadget, The Verge, Polygon, StarTrek.com, StarWars.com, the AV Club, and more. You can find her on Twitter at @skrishna. Jenn Northington is a former bookseller and a current reviewer, podcaster, and editor with Riot New Media Group. She's a lifelong book nerd and can be found primarily on Instagram at IamJennIRL. And tonight, Swapna and Jenn will be joined in conversation with Anna Kaufman, who's an editor at Vintage Inker Books. And so in Swordstone Table, you'll find the Lady of the Lake reimagined as an albino Ugandan sorceress, and the Lady of Shawl as a wealthy, isolated woman in futuristic Mexico City. You'll see Excalibur rediscovered as a baseball bat that grants a washed-up minor leaguer a fresh shot at glory, and as a lost ceremonial drum that returns to a young First Nations boy the power and the dignity of his people. There are stories set in Gilded Age Chicago, 80s New York, 21st century Singapore, and space. There are lesbian lady knights, Arthur and Merlin reborn in the modern era for a second chance at saving the world and falling in love. Even a coffee shop AU. Brave, bold, and groundbreaking, the stories in Swordstone Table will bring fresh life to beloved myths and give longtime fans a chance to finally see themselves in their favorite legends. Featuring stories from Roshani, Chokshi, Maria Dahvana Headley, Silvia Moreno-Garcia, Anthony Rapp, and many more. This collection is basically what I've been wishing for since I read Mary Stuart in high school. And thank you so much for joining us tonight. If you are purchasing your copy from The Novel Neighbor, we'll have the link in the bottom. Not only will your copy come with a signed bookplate, but you'll get an awesome limited edition Camelot Or Bust sticker while supplies last. So without further ado, let me bring everybody on and we'll get the show started.
Hi, everybody.
Hello. Thank you, Katie, for that wonderful introduction.
Yes, thank you.
Lovely. Thank you for having us and for pitching the book so well.
Yeah, I know. I was like, when I was listening to Katie give the introduction, I was like, oh yeah, we did do that, didn't we?
That's the book.
That is the book. It sounds really good. I read that.
Also, high tips for the Mary Stuart shout out, because that was one of mine, and so I'm pointing at Swapna, but she's on the other side. Anyway, that was one of our touch points that we bonded over that actually led to this anthology. So Mary Stuart forever.
Yeah. That actually sort of leads into one of the things I know we wanted to all talk about was like how we got into Arthuriana. So I'd love to hear your origin stories.
Yeah, so I really have been trying to remember my first exposure to King Arthur, and I think it has to be the Disney Swordstone Table, or Swordstone Table. That's not the name of it. Sword and Stone.
Good wish for like 2024 or something, though.
Yeah, there you go. Disney. I don't know if I want Disney adapting this anthology for the right. Sorry, Disney. But I think it has to be that. But then I think that turned into like me owning T.H. White and then reading Mary Stuart at probably too young of an age, and just like then finding every single King Arthur book I could get my hands on.
Swapna, what about you?
I think, okay, it has to have been The Sword and the Stone because, you know, I watched all the Disney movies when I was a kid, but I don't actually remember watching it. So the first exposure I remember, I like Jenn, I had been like racking my brain trying to figure it out. And I finally remembered actually when I went and checked out my Arthur shelf, when I was actually shelving Swordstone Table on my like King Arthur shelf that I have at home. Susan Cooper's The Dark is Rising trilogy, which I read. A teacher had us read The Grey King, which is the fourth book in the series. Did I call it a trilogy? It's 5 books. Anyway, it's the fourth book in the series. And King Arthur is sort of character in the book, and like he's part of the mythology she creates in these books. And that was my real introduction to King Arthur, and that's what hooked me. because the way those books are written and the way like the mythology is so deep and woven, I think that attracted me to just kind of that kind of fantasy book.
Yeah. I feel like I also have to add to my answer that I got mono when I was in junior high. And so I spent a solid month watching nothing but Monty Python and the Holy Grail and Robin Hood Men in Tights. So that probably also was pivotal to my whole evolution. Anna, what about you?
I was trying to figure this out too. And while I'm sure I also saw Sword and Stone, because I think you're required to by law. For me, I think I had a picture book I'm not good at pronouncing this ever, and now after I saw The Green Knight, and this is my only spoilery comment for The Green Knight, I promise, is I just want to say Sir Gawain. So I'm just going to lean into that. So I had a picture book of Sir Gawain and the Loathly Lady, and I Googled it recently trying to find. I actually found it pretty quickly. It was by a woman named Selena Hastings. I was sure it was by someone famous. Like I was like, it's got to be by like Jane Yolen or something.
Right.
But it's not. But it was beautifully illustrated, and it was that story which hit everything. There's more danger and romance and it's weirdly kind of feminist, sort of. I just fell in love with that, and I think that was sort of what brought me weird. And unfortunately, that's not a story we play with so much in this collection. So that's for the sequel, obviously.
Obviously.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, Jen, take the lead.
Well, I was just going to say, I am so excited to have you here because as fun as it has been to be doing events with all of our contributors, which has been amazing, this was such an interesting process for me and Swapna, and you were such a pivotal part of it all. And so I'm really excited to get some of your takes on how anthologies work and how editing works. And so I know we wanted to talk about how there are different kinds of editing. So talk to us about that.
Well, this is what I was thinking about. That I was trying to think of what would be interesting to people about our process, right? Our process. And I think it is fascinating that there's sort of two versions of editing. There's both of which you guys did, and which I, as a editor at a publishing house, also do in different respects, which is there's the curation aspect, the selection, where for you had to choose all of these authors and figure out how you wanted the stories to work. And then there's the actual, what I think more people think of as editing, which is the red pen style of editing. And I don't know if you wanted to talk about sort of the experience in each of those, because I'm fascinated in how you curated this collection, because that was really all the two of you, and you did such an amazing job.
So basically, Jenn and I both have brains that we really like Google Docs and we really like spreadsheets. That's one way. I think we knew we would work together well because we both plan and brainstorm in the same way. So we basically made this giant spreadsheet, which I think at some point in the process you saw, Anna, and just dumped every single writer that we both were a fan of and thought might answer our email. Those are the two criteria. We had some sort of connect to, whether we'd worked with their agent at one point or Jen had interviewed them for a podcast at one point, or, some sort of, connect to, because I think a lot of gathering authors for anthologies, are they going to open your email? Which, that's not easy. It's not these writers get a lot of email. And so, you have to if they see my name or if they see Jen's name, are they going to open it? And so I think that was a lot of it. It was just combination of being fans of them and having some sort of connection to them in some way to be okay, there's a good chance they'll open this.
Yeah, and also thinking about the different genres, because Swapna and I both read really broadly. We read across genres of fiction as well as nonfiction. And we did want this to be not just sci-fi fantasy or literary fiction or any one thing. We wanted it to be as many different things as we could shove into it. So playing the puzzle game of okay, what are we missing right now? Who do we know in that genre that we love? Putting those pieces together was really fun. So when this proposal came across your desk, right? You get this pitch from our agent. What's your thinking process around whether or not you're going to pick it up?
Well, I mean, actually, one of the things you just said is one of the things that drew me to it, which is that I love that the idea that it would be diverse in genre and not just in all the other ways. Like you were aiming for that too, which I think is really fun and kind of unusual when it comes to anthologies. So I really liked that. And then, I mean, I'm excited by transformative works in general. One of my favorite things in anything, and I think that I look for this no matter what, is to see people like playing with tropes and reinventing them and taking old things and finding ways to make them feel fresh and new again and make you see them from an entirely new angle. And I just felt like there was so much opportunity in the way that you both laid out this idea for that to happen, and that we would get to see all these, like, you know, these cornerstone characters and myths in ways that we wouldn't before, in a way that would be like really special to a lot of people. And then I just, you know, I liked you guys. We talked on the phone. This makes it sound, I mean, that's the thing though. It's not some like scientific process. It was the exact opposite of a spreadsheet, where it's so much like just like a gut feeling. And also it's just, you ask yourself, like, do I want to work on this? Would this be fun for me to do? And I thought it would be, and it was. So good job, my gut, I guess.
Hooray.
Yay. Were you guys surprised then when, I don't know if you have as much experience when you got into actually getting to do then the like the other type of editing, the like red pen editing?
I think Jen and I both had a lot of imposter syndrome when it came to that, because like I've done a lot of nonfiction. I've done like both essays and you know, like more like academic type works. I've done a lot of you know, journalism, all of that, but I've never touched fiction as an editor. And Jen, I don't think you have either.
Nope.
Yeah, so we were both just like, okay, we're going to be editing these really fantastic authors, like, and there was a lot of imposter syndrome there. But Anna, I feel like we both took a lot of lead and inspiration from you, because we didn't know what we were doing.
Well, every day for me is pushing past imposter syndrome. So, I mean, I think that I wasn't like formally trained or anything either. Like I don't have an MFA. I didn't go to a publishing course. I just really like books, and I read a lot of books. And I read my friends' stories, and I played around with them. I did work for some magazines and also nonfiction. I edited, like, you know, bad celebrity pieces and stuff like that. So obviously that's really quality. But yeah, I mean, I think it's the same thing where you just sort of, you know what you like, and probably you internally have a very good sense of how you think stories work or should work, or at least how they make you happy, right? I saw your comments when you were like asking for tweaks or other things. So, like you've internalized certain beats and desires, and then you just have to figure out how to make them happen or help someone else make them happen, really.
Right. I was talking about this with a friend very early on in the process who's like a very fancy author. So I'm lucky that she speaks to me. And I was telling her how nervous I was about the actual like line and structural editing part of this. And she was like, you've read a billion books. Like, you know what works, and you might have a hard time articulating it. But like, I feel like if you sit with it for long enough and think about, okay, what am I missing, or what's working? What do I love? What do I want to see more of? Like that's what editing is for the most part. Like not entirely, but like that's a lot of what it is. And that'll get you a decent amount of the way there. And that was really helpful advice for me, because it was like, okay, right. Like I do know when I feel like something's working and when I feel like it's not. And not that I'm always right, but like, you know, it's a starting place, I guess, is how I want to say it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it comes from just reading a lot. And you know, it's sometimes you don't, you know, as a reader, you don't necessarily move into solutions, but you can tell when something's missing.
Yeah.
Or, you know, like this feels choppy, but I think the challenge is bridging that gap to like, okay, bridging the gap from I can tell something is missing to let's give, you know, the writer some suggestions on what might fill that gap, but leave it up to them to fill it. And kind of walking that line is interesting. And I would love to hear you talk about this a little bit, actually, because Jenn and I and you, we all felt strongly about letting the writers tell the story they wanted to tell, right? Like, it was not about our vision. It was not about what we wanted them to be. We wanted them to tell the story they wanted to tell. So how, because you did a lot more of the like overall shaping of some of these stories, and how do you walk that line?
It's tough. It's something you have to think about constantly. I try to think of it as, you want to make the story be the best version of the story that it wants to be. You want it to become the truest version of itself. So you're not wanting to impose anything from the outside. You just want to help it figure out itself. So, I mean, there's a number of ways that you can try to do that. It's sort of like you both were saying, almost sometimes you feel like, you're Dr. House, like you can tell you're like, this story is sick, but what does it have? You have to like diagnose the problem. And, other times it's like you're just trying to coax it out. Sometimes I'm going to just keep going with bad metaphors, but like sometimes, you're a sculptor and you've got this partially exposed statue in a block of marble and you're just figuring out like, where do I tap to get the rest of these pieces away? But yeah, what I always try to keep in mind is that it's not my story. It's not necessarily the story I would write, but it's a story that wants to be the best version of itself. How do I and the author try to get it there?
Yeah. And not for nothing, some of these stories needed almost no editing. So
yeah, sometimes it was like, wow, well, I hope you like the fact that I corrected 3 typos.
Yeah.
I think there was a missing comma.
I'm a hero, and you're welcome. Yeah.
So you talked about transformative works, and in the course of all of the interviewing that Swapna and I have done, fan fiction has come up a couple of times in different contexts, and we both are like, yep, it's fan fiction. Like, obviously it's fan fiction. Why wouldn't it be fan fiction? I have no problems with that word. And I was wondering about your take on like fan fiction.
Yeah, I mean, I'm extremely pro, and a lot of things are, if you're being like, I think Neil Gaiman has said this a lot too. Like, I think someone came at him once and was like, "Don't you hate it when people write fic about your stories?" And he was like, "Well, I won a Hugo for writing Sherlock Holmes Lovecraft fic, so I don't want that taken away. I think I'm fine with it." And then you can go so far as to say that Shakespeare was doing that too. There's there's only 11 stories and then we're all playing the same themes. Like, I think that we're all sitting around a campfire together, all of humanity, and we're all passing these stories around back and forth. And so everything is fanfic and nothing is fanfic is what I'm saying.
I love that.
Yeah. Here's a question I don't think we've got that I have for the two of you. Do you have a favorite retelling? Like, not the one that you read first, not the one that, was formative, but just like over the years. Is there like a favorite movie, favorite book?
We're putting on our thinking faces.
Yeah, I know. Because I was like, that's a question I don't think we've been asked before, and it's a good one.
Do you have an answer? While I
I'm thinking like, I have one too. I wasn't ready.
No, the rule is the person who asks has to. Because I don't know. I think in terms of just the breadth of the legend and the like historical roots, it's got to be Mary Stuart's Merlin trilogy, just because it was formative, but it's also just it's a very good story. But there's a lot there. It's hard to say.
Yeah, so my provisional answer, because I might change my mind, but the first thing that occurs to me is a little bit, it's like Anna was saying, everything is fanfic and nothing is fanfic. Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones feels to me like fic of all of those Brothers Grimm stories, because Sophie, the main character, lives in this world that's ruled by fairy tale rules, and she knows that as the oldest, she's not going to have an adventure. If she leaves on a quest, she's going to fail. The youngest is the one who's going to do the thing. So that's how she gets into her entire predicament in the first place. But then what if that wasn't true? And what if, right? What if those are the rules, but, and that feels, I think one of the reasons that's one of my like a chicken soup book, like whenever I'm like down or like I'm sick and I just like my brain is foggy and I just need something to distract me from whatever else is going on. Like that's a book I'll pick up and read over and over and over again because it does feel like a warm hug for the soul. And I think part of that is because it is so rooted in that European fairy tale tradition, which I grew up with. And like, I feel like, you know, I hope that my tastes have broadened since then. And so that's why that's a provisional answer at the moment, because I'm thinking about other things, but that is definitely one of them for me.
That's a great answer.
That's better than anything I came up with at that period, honestly. I'm trying to remember some other things. I really did love that Lovely Lady picture book, like so much. Someone helped Selena Hastings out with royalties by buying a lot of those copies of that. It's probably out of print. I have a very fond memory. I loved, this is very adjacent, but as a kid, I was absolutely obsessed with the Errol Flynn Robin Hood movie, which I know is not the same thing, but like we watched that over and over and over again. And I feel like of things that are like knights and castles and it's a legend and it feels adjacent, like that's the truest answer, is the depth of obsession with that movie, which everyone should rewatch because it totally holds up, except for the fact that you can be like, wow, England looks so much like Southern California. But otherwise it's great.
I don't think I've ever seen it. And I'm a huge Robin Hood fan, so
yeah.
It's so good. It's really, really very good. And yeah, Olivia de Havilland is like luminous and all of her dresses are beautiful. And Basil Rathbone is delightfully scary. I really recommend that movie.
Nice.
Very off-topic recommendation.
Listen, we're all here to be fans.
Yeah, it goes along with what we're talking about with transformative works.
There we go. Thank you. I have no idea historically where the Robin Hood legend falls, and maybe it wouldn't exist though without Arthurian legend. My historian friend is going to kill me for not.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's a bold statement.
Time is fake now. We all know.
Well, it's true. It's just true.
Yeah. So speaking, just winding back sort of to the publishing thing, this is both of your first book. What about the process was like surprising to you? I'd love to know so that we can improve. No.
Please rate us on a scale of 1 to 10.
Yeah. Please fill out a 3-minute survey.
I think, and Kate, our lovely agent Kate McKean, warned us of this when we got into it, but I didn't understand the amount of coordinating it would take. I think that was, it was a lot of coordinating, and I feel like I didn't, and I think it's nothing you can't understand until you're in it. It's not something somebody can describe to you, really.
Yeah. I think, and I don't know that I think this is just normal, but I had no idea. So, right, we went through the like heavy editing process, right? And then like, okay, everybody has approved their edits and like we've sent it back to you and now it's going to get like typeset and all that stuff. And then there are like 3 more rounds of editing. And I was like, wait, I thought we did this already. Didn't we do this already? Are we still doing edits? And I didn't realize how many layers of editing there are in the production, in the actual like producing of the book process. And they're important because we definitely caught things that then needed to be fixed. But like, I had no idea that. I was like, oh, we're done. Nope, there's another, we're still going. We're still doing this. Okay, here we go.
Yeah. And I will say any of these things are much more complicated when you're doing an anthology, and especially an anthology like this where it's all original pieces and living writers. And so there's just a million more people involved, obviously. So you have to coordinate with all of those people. Each story has to be sent out separately for all those things. And then, yeah, I mean, we, Vintage and Penguin Random House is very, very careful. We really try to make those books come out perfectly. They still don't always, but we try. And so, yeah, you've got copy editing, you've got 2 rounds of proofreading on everything minimum. So yeah, I think that could be surprising that it's like, we're done. It's like, no.
We were so not done.
No.
Well, but okay, so you mentioned that this anthology, right, it's a lot of it's all original works. Well, yeah, one reprint, otherwise all original works and living authors. So you've worked on other anthologies that were not like that. Like, how does this anthology compare in your work experience?
I mean, this is a lot more work. Anytime you're doing one like this, it's because everything is new. So everything's from scratch. It's also can be, really, really exciting. That's fun. When you're doing, I've worked on anthologies where it's all old works and you have to accept everything as it is, for good or bad. You're not going to go back and ask Ursula K. Le Guin to edit her piece. Also, I would never dare, but you can't do that. Often the authors are dead, and even if they're not, it's a published piece. At most, if you with a living author, but it's already published. If you found a typo, you could be like, "Hey, is it okay if we fix this?" And probably they'd be like, "Yeah, please. That's been bothering me for 15 years." So, you have a lot more freedom, and with a lot more freedom, there's a lot more labor. But I think it's really fun, and it's especially fun. And I forget which one of you had this idea, but like, I loved also just seeing things like how you decided to like order the stories and how we ended up sort of creating this narrative within the book. I don't remember where that idea came from.
We've been asked about it
We've been asked about that a lot, and we don't remember either.
I feel like it just like appeared like a mushroom overnight. Like I remember being in the throes of trying to order the stories, and I found the spreadsheet where I had made like, okay, here's a list of all of the stories. Here's Anna's column, here's Swapna's column, here's Jenn's column. Like, which order do we think these should go in? And it was basically blank because I think we didn't get too far down that direction when one of us was like, wait, we have historical, we have present, we have future. Like, what if we did it that way? But I have no idea which one of us it was.
Yeah.
Great. We can all share the credit then.
Yeah, I think so. I think we should. Like, it was very...
I don't think it was me. I think it was one of these two. But nevertheless, I'll take some.
Okay, Anna, I do have another question for you. So one question that we've gotten a lot is how much, in terms of writers picking the stories, picking the subject, how much direction did we give them?
Yeah.
And Jenn and I say like almost none. Like there are times we asked authors to write specific genres. There are times we ask them to focus or not focus on certain characters because keeping balance. What did you think? Like, is that normal for an anthology? Were you just like, oh my gosh, I hope the stories we get are good because they're giving people no direction? Like, did it scare you?
I mean, this was really the first one I'd worked on where it was so many original pieces, and probably I was deceptive to you and made you think I knew what I was doing. But but no, it made sense to me because I think you can hold an author's hand too much, or you can be restrictive. I mean, there's types of restriction that can result in creativity, but I don't think that's one of them. I think like, you want to just plant a kernel, and for the people where we were like trying to fill a hole, essentially, like we wanted a genre or a character or some other aspect, even that was just like a little, hopefully sparky grain. And I think giving folks freedom, obviously I think it worked in this case. I thought it turned out great. But I mean, I'm working on another original anthology now. I've just signed it. The editors are great. They're doing everything so far. I'm doing nothing. But I think that's going to be a similar thing. I don't think they're like hand-holding at all. It's just thematic. And it's exciting to see what people come up with. It makes me very excited for when the stories actually start coming in. I know with this, I was like, I never knew what I was going to get. It was really exciting to open my email.
Oh yeah, that was, I think, one of my favorite parts of this was that we asked people to tell us what characters they were working on so that we wouldn't have too much overlap. And then, yeah, if we had asked them to include certain genre elements or not, we knew that like, okay, those would be in there. But that's like some crime, a little bit of sci-fi. Like that doesn't tell you anything about what you're actually going to get. And so, it was so fun seeing where people went because it was, I felt like they were all directions I never would have thought to request. I never would have expected. Like, I think it was far, far better than anything we could have dreamed up, for sure.
Yeah, it gives everyone wrote the story that only they could have written.
Yeah.
That was in their heart. Everything felt like exactly that writer's perfect story. So, I don't know. I think it's the perfect method, and no one should ever do anything else.
Clearly it worked once.
Yeah, right. Oh, funny. Okay, so I know that I just have to, this is where I have to shout out The Green Knight, because I watched it last night, y'all, and I just can't stop thinking about it. And the Garwin thing is really interesting, but I don't want to give any spoilers. I know not everybody has seen it yet, but it was so interesting. Like, talk about people making choices that I was like, oh, that's interesting. And it really did feel like a movie. I mean, I'm going to say this out loud, and it sounds really like full of hubris, but like, it felt like it was in the same zone as what a lot of our authors were doing, where it's like, yeah, here's this thing that's sort of like maybe a little dusty but beloved nonetheless. And like, I'm going to put it in a blender and see what comes out. And I just feel like that's so cool that we're in this moment where we are getting these kinds of retellings. They're just like around. And Swapna and I have been asked this question like 5 times, and I don't know that our answer is actually that good. Do you feel like there's a reason why now is the time that this is happening?
I mean, the joke that I always told, because, we were working on this in like 2019, 2020, I was like, gosh, I wonder why people think that the world needs saving. I wonder why everyone wants, Arthur to come back and restore the world, bring us to Avalon. I'm not sure. I mean, I do think that's probably part of it. I also think these things are cyclical, right? So, I think these stories at this point are eternal enough that they're just going to keep coming back. We're also having like there's a lot of mythology things happening. There's like a Greek mythology resurgence happening with a lot of stuff. So, probably to figure out what's going on in the present, we're all looking back to see if our ancestors had any wisdom. What else, Swapna? What was your answer to that? I can't remember.
I started blathering on about the hero's journey. I went to like a fugue state and started talking about like the hero's journey and how like every like story, these days is really, it's the same story over and over again. It's the hero's journey. And so I do actually believe that, like, that it's a timeless story in and of itself, as they all are, because it's all just a retelling of the same kind of tropes. And then I ended up at like Kylo Ren as Mordred. So
yeah, he's space Mordred. It's just true. It's just true. It's indisputable.
I'm laughing because you're right. So
it's everywhere.
Yes.
Yeah, really delightful. Really delightful. Okay, so all right, so that's what we're swimming in now, but like, where do we want it to go next, right? Like, what's next? Do we know?
I want to hear this from you guys more than anything. I feel like you're more on the cutting edge, and you need to bring it to me. So,
I'm not sure. In terms of retellings, I think we're going to get a lot more of around the world versus just Western Europe and the United States. I think we're going to get. I think there's a lot to do internationally, and I think it's going to start happening in a real way.
Swapna, you said something really smart on one of our interviews. Yeah, you did, where we were talking about retellings, and you were saying how you hate it when, I'm like paraphrasing you, so sorry, but you were saying you hate it when people are like, oh, aren't we done with retelling this thing? And you were like, no, because right now what we have are authors from marginalized backgrounds, from communities that have not been represented or heard. And like, when they do it, no, we absolutely have not heard that before. We have not seen it before. So we're not done. Like, we're not done. And that has really stuck with me. And I think it's so true. Like, that is what I live for, is to see these, like, whether it's a retelling or an original work, but it's these voices that are bubbling up, finally making space, and having the support to be heard, and to just like explode some of these sort of again dusty parts of storytelling. So yeah, it's something I hear a lot about with Jane Austen retellings, which was like there was a big boom of them maybe 5-10
to 7 years ago.
I mean, we're still getting them in the last 2 years.
In the last year or two, yeah, I was gonna say, and in the last year or two, it has really come to like South Asian literature in a really fantastic way, and that's a complaint I hear a lot. And I'm like, no, because these are new. These are completely new retellings. It's not that this has been done. This is something different. And this is people of color getting to see themselves in stories they've read their whole lives, but never had a chance to be a part of until now.
Yeah.
I want to see more of all of these things, frankly. I think that there's creative takes on both on like stories I haven't thought of, like whatever, some other version of Arthuriana thing, like type thing that I can't think of, and then just approaches from all different types of people that I haven't thought of yet either. And I can't wait to see whoever comes up with that, and I want to read or see whatever that is. I do have to ask, did you guys see the post going around where everyone was freaking out because someone called The Green Knight the latest installment in the franchise?
Yes!
Oh my god!
Yes, I did! And I thought about how I called it a King Arthur shared universe in one of the interviews Jen and I did. And I was like, I wouldn't call it a franchise, but definitely a shared universe.
Shared universe is much better, and we should write that headline writer a note.
Yeah. Because it is absolutely a shared universe. But
the KAU, we can workshop this.
Yeah.
There's some audience questions.
Yes.
I want to make sure that we have time for those. So David asks, what was the cover selection process like? Were you assigned an artist? Any revisions, direction?
Well, so this is kind of starts with you then.
Yeah. How did we end up with our cover? Our cover artist and designer was the amazing Perry de la Vega. But Anna, start this.
Well, it might be interesting to just briefly, like the way the process works is after I've like launched the book for the sort of the company and sales and told everyone about it, there's a separate meeting where we specifically meet with the art department, and you talk about the book and you talk about how you see it like tonally and if you have any visual inspirations, and it's assigned to someone who sort of fits the aesthetic of what you were saying. And I really wanted to like my vision, such as it was, and I can't take credit for the final product, but like I wanted to do something that felt like fun and old school, and like I had this image in my mind of like old school Mary Stewart covers and other sort of like pulpy things of like the 60s, 70s. I don't know, some kind of thing of that aesthetic was in my mind. So Perry is an amazing illustrator, and also like some of the designers, take images and build them beautifully and create them in design that way. And I'm sure he can also do that, but he also can draw. He's like an actual like artist, and he created that image. And we did go through a number of different directions. It started out, there were some more that were like more traditional, but I didn't want this to look traditional. I wanted it to draw from that tradition, but have sort of like a pulpy, punky spirit. And I think people have said as a compliment and not that it looks like van art. And I'm like, yes, exactly. Exactly. I want it to look like, your coolest friend who's maybe smoking a little weed just rolls up in their van and they've got rock music blasting, and they might have had a wizard on the side, but instead it's our book cover.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And I think when it came to Jen and I, we got to give feedback, and our feedback was pretty minor.
Yeah, like there were like a couple
direction.
different like color versions. Like, is the color story more green? Is it more purple? Is there a moon? Is there not a moon? What is
how are they holding
the
the sword?
Yeah, how are they holding the sword? I got like very on my horse about how someone holds a sword. But otherwise, yeah, they were pretty like, I think they were, at least as far as I felt, like they were pretty minor revisions.
Yeah, I felt like they were small.
I remember most just all the conversations about making the sword look right. And then that continued on because we have all the great sword motif in there's a talented interior designer too. And there's all these great sword motifs in the book itself. And I don't remember who it was who pointed out, they're like, so that looks like a cross on a mountain in an early draft.
That page. Because if you put it up right, it looks like a different thing.
Yeah.
So I'm like, swords gave us a lot of trouble throughout this book, but it's worth it because swords are very cool. So Kayla asks, what other dusty tales or forgotten legends would you all like to see reimagined? Which is a good extension of what we were talking about before.
I feel like now Jenn needs to do a Robin Hood, and Jenn and Anna need to do a Robin Hood anthology. Robin Hood was never my thing. I love like Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and all that, but like,
it's on my long list. I'm not gonna lie, Robin is definitely on my long list because so my fictional organization of this is that you have all of the merry men, and then you have King Richard, the Lionheart, you have the sheriff, you have Maid Marian. Like you have so many, again, lots of characters to play with. The tricky thing about Robin Hood is that I don't think those characters are as well known, which is both a blessing and a curse. Like it's, maybe the fandom is not quite as specific and strong, but I have thought about it.
I feel like there's fewer side quests.
Yes. Well, that's the other, like, we don't have a Grail story, which still boggles my mind. Like, we have 16 stories with a ton of characters, and there's not a single Grail in there. Like, how do we
Avalon?
There's no Avalon. How do we even do that? Like, but that's how big Arthuriana is, right? There's just so much.
Because people were writing fanfic of Arthuriana, like, immediately. I mean, that's what the Fairy Queen is. That's what Morta Arthur is. It's the original fanfic right there.
And Tristan and Isolde, which kind of just got tacked on. Right. I was surprised we didn't have a Tristan story. Yeah. Yeah,
right. Yep. So, but I have thought about Robin Hood. Well, and you had an idea, Swapna, that I
would love to do a kind of Mahabharata, which is a Hindu epic, like anthology, like different retellings and like some, the same type of thing, some historical, some past, present, future. And I think that could be really fascinating because it is such a timeless story. And like, if you haven't heard of it, think of like Homer's Iliad or the Odyssey, but it's a religious epic for us. And so I think that would be fascinating.
Yeah. There's so many like global mythologies that I think don't get enough play. And I'd love to see some of those like have their moment to really shine. Like, I think even like there's not even enough like Egyptian mythology stuff.
No,
Here, why isn't it so good?
Yeah. I'm like, and that makes my like Stargate SG-1 heart like flutter because I mean like I'm such a nerd for that show.
I mean, I was an Atlantis girl, but okay.
Oh my god, I loved it. I just did a rewatch, Anna.
Really?
Oh
I'm like afraid to go back. What if it doesn't?
It's bad. Oh, it's bad. Like SG-1 is like good product of its time bad. Atlantis is just bad.
But bad and dear to me. So I don't know.
Yes. Absolutely. And Jason Momoa. I mean,
I know. It gave us that. Yeah.
Yes. They gave. I don't know if he gave us Jason Momoa. I think he was on Baywatch before that.
He was on Baywatch. He was Cody on Baywatch.
It gave me that, for which I am eternally
grateful. But yes, I did not watch Baywatch, so it introduced me to Jason Momoa.
I had no idea that's where he got his start, aside from Baywatch. That's a new to me fact.
He showed up in the second season and had these like long like dreadlocks, and it was just a handsome man.
Good.
Oh, Lord.
Gave me a memorable 2006.
It looks like another audience question came in.
Do you want to do the honor of reading it?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so Shane asks, after all the hard work of editing and curating, how did it feel when the final trade paperback was tangible in your hands? Indescribable is what I'm going to go with.
And I think Jenn and I were both a little frantic because all the contributors got their copies, and Jenn and I are like, "Where are our copies?" Like, it's like we're seeing all these like pictures like of the contributors being so excited to have it, and we didn't have it, and it was like 3 or 4 days later.
Literally, Waubgeshig Rice in Canada got his books like a week earlier than I got mine, and I was like, how did they make it to Canada before they made it to Philly?
I remember texting Jenn because I was like, there's a 20-pound box from UPS on its way to my house today. I think they're coming. And then so there was anticipation just generally, but I think on top of that, because we'd seen them out in the wild already in so many pictures, there was anticipation on top of anticipation.
Yeah.
I'm glad it lived up to that. I can tell you the secret about how Waub got his first, and that's because PRH gets freaked out about international shipping and almost always overnights those. So I bet his got defaulted to overnight.
Oh my God. Amazing. That would explain it.
Yeah.
That would explain it. Yeah. I can't even tell you how weird it feels to be holding something with your name on it. Like Anna, does this ever get old? Like, you've done a bunch of books now. Like, does it ever get less bananas?
It's so exciting to finally see it as a physical object. There's just nothing matching that. And this is why I think print books will continue. I'm a former independent bookseller, so I have to do an extra shout out to our hosts as well. Bye from Indies.
Yes.
But there's something really special about a physical book, and a tangible object is so satisfying to have in your hands. And then that's just on a basic level. And then you add to that, it's something that you worked on and have been a part of, and it's amazing. I never stop being excited especially when it's something really dear to me. This was also horrible for me to have to wait for. I was in California, and it got shipped to my apartment in New York. So I was like, well, I guess I'll see it eventually. I think I saw it. No, I got back before it came out. I was like, did I see it in a bookstore first? Because then I also like to go see it, like in situ. Did you guys do that? Did you guys go visit a physical store to see it?
Barnes & Noble had it.
Yeah, Swapna got to. I did not get to.
Yeah, it was really exciting, and it was. I went with one of our contributors, Preeti Chhibber. She made me go because I was like, I don't know. It's odd to do an anthology because it is very much our baby, but it's not our book.
Right.
If that makes sense. Like, this book belongs to the people who wrote stories in it, and like Jenn and I just kind of facilitated putting it together. And that's a very important role. But like, I don't think I feel the same. I have the right to feel the same ownership over it that I do. So like Preeti was like, oh, well, we should go, like, we should commemorate the day. Let's go, see it in a bookstore. And I felt very odd about it, but I'm really glad I did now.
Yeah.
I'm really glad you guys got to do that. I'm sure there's somewhere that I've missed because I've been Twitter allergic.
I think I don't even know if I put it on Twitter. I might have.
Did you put it on Instagram? I think you put it on Instagram.
Yeah, I definitely put it on Instagram.
Yeah.
I don't go to those lands.
I'll text it to you.
I think the day that I walk into a bookstore and see it, though, is going to be wild. And I will say that some people have been really lovely and sent me DMs of them finding it in their library or in their bookstore. And I cannot tell you, that feeling is also indescribable. Like, oh, there it is. It's like, that's not, I didn't put that there. Like, somebody
That's
else
exactly, like, it was like, and that's part of
there.
why I didn't go, because we worked with a local indie to, for book selling and stuff. So I was just like, but going into a store where I was like, I didn't tell them to buy this or put it on their shelf, and seeing it was like.
But also thank you to everybody who bought it and put it on the shelf, because we told you to. Like, we super appreciate that.
All of them, we do.
All of the people, all of anybody who has touched it. Thank you.
We do. We absolutely appreciate it.
Yeah. Especially the indies, though. All of our events have been with indie bookstores, and all of these indies are amazing. And you should buy your books from Novel Neighbor if you're watching this right now. Buy your books from them. Even if it's not ours, buy any book from them.
Yes. Yeah, it doesn't have to be ours.
No. Buy one of our contributors' other books. They're really good.
So many good options.
Yes.
So
good.
I
know. I have a list a mile long of the contributors' other books. I want to read Maria Dahvana Headley's Beowulf translation.
Oh my gosh, y'all! It's so good. It's so good.
And then Waub is working on the sequel to Moon of the Crusted Snow, and I only got because I started reading it to evaluate his what I thought of his stuff for
our spreadsheet.
For spreadsheet, and then I never finished it, so I'm like, I gotta go back and finish that. And then Alex Segura is a new book coming out from Flatiron called Secret Identity, which is a crime novel with that's about a comic book, and I'm like, ooh. I'm so excited.
Yeah, and Sarah MacLean's new romance Bombshell comes out.
That cover is
this week, next week, soon. It's very soon. Yeah. It's real good. I read it. It's great.
This is the other thing about a good anthology, is that it's like a built-in recommendations list that just spirals off in so many other fantastic directions.
Well, this is what I always tell people because one of the things I work on for Book Ride is Get Booked, which is a reading recommendation show. So people write in like, oh, I'm having trouble finding this, or I need something like this for a friend or a relative. And I love recommending anthologies, especially for people who are like, I've read everything, I've run out of new authors. And I'm like, no, you have not. Like, here, like, let me give you an anthology that's going to send you down 1,000 wormholes. Like, you're not going to have heard of these authors before. You're going to want to find everything they've written. Like, go forth and have fun. It is one of, I think, the most amazing things about an anthology is that, yeah, it introduces you to people you might never have picked up otherwise. And then you can find their other stuff. And it's a gift that keeps on giving.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah,
wait, Anna. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. No.
Well, it just reminded me of a question I have. So one of the things that we know in publishing is that anthologies don't do well, right? Like, this is like a chestnut of publishing, is that like anthologies are like expensive to produce and like are not going to get on the bestseller list. So do you think that like the perception of anthologies in like the industry side is changing at all, or?
I do think it is, because there's been so many exceptions to that supposed rule that you at some point you have to stop calling them exceptions. I mean, people also like to say that memoirs don't sell, except for the ones that are on the New York Times bestseller list, right? And like all of these truisms are BS. And it's just, and when people say like, oh, well, that genre is tough, like pretty much every genre is tough. There's books that do well of every type, and there's books that don't do well of every type. Right. So, I think it's much more you find something that you like. I have to defend this because I work on a lot of anthologies and I really enjoy them. So, but no, I mean, there's too many that do too well for that to be true, and I think people are realizing that. So
that's great. Okay, Swapna, I totally stepped over a thing you were gonna say.
No, it was very kind of sideways. I was just gonna say, when I was working in comics, anthologies were a really fantastic way to find more marginalized authors, since comics is such a, non-diverse. It's getting better, but when I was working in a, like 5 to 7 years ago, it was not.
Yeah.
I also love them just as a way of finding sometimes like younger authors or authors who haven't had, their novel out yet, but here's like a great story. Mm-hmm. I mean, again, another book that never sells any copies, like The Best American Non-Required Reading, that nobody buys ever because nobody buys anthologies. Things like that. There's often authors in there who are getting highlighted for the first time, and that's a really fun discovery process. And that's a great thing about anthologies too.
Nice.
Pro anthology hour.
Yay!
Yay! And we do have some new names in ours. Zainab Williams, Jess Plummer. Mm-hmm. And Preeti Chhibber didn't have much published yet, and one short story published when we asked her to write for us, and now she's written like 8 books.
Yeah.
So I can't
she's like, discover me? No.
Right. And Steve Doyle, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, some
new
names.
We're balanced in every way.
Yes. We tried. We really tried to.
We did try. Yeah.
So I want to know, can you guys talk about either like something that you're working on now that's exciting, or something that you have coming up?
Well, yeah, a lot of my time right now is being spent also with Preeti Chhibber, the perennial favorite. We have a podcast called Untitled or Bust that is just 100% us talking about The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan, speaking of fandoms, because the show is coming out in November, and we were like, it started out as a pandemic project. It's like, okay, let's start rereading the books in advance of the show and see how far we get. And then we're like, wow, I want to talk to you about it. And then we're like, well, maybe we'll make it into a podcast. And now it's a podcast. But because we've done so much for Swordstone Table, there hasn't been like a lot of, I feel like I'm still working on this book. So like in terms of big creative projects, like it's still Swordstone Table. But that's my favorite creative project at the moment.
Yeah, I dabble. I'm still writing my Wired column on video games that comes out every other week, and the last 2 columns I've written have ended up on the front page of Wired's as a top story. For over 24 hours I was published, so apparently people are reading it. So that's most of where my creative energy is going, doing that kind of work, still, freelancing, doing some book reviews and stuff like that. But hopefully at some point I can talk about some of the secret projects I'm working on.
Secrets.
Yeah, I know, not yet, but
sorry for feeling like I needed to do the part at the end of every podcast with a guest where they're like, so do you have anything that you'd like to plug?
No, I mean, I'm the one who put it in our question list. So
yes. Anna, do you have anything you would like to plug?
Oh gosh. I mean, well, I mentioned that I've got some anthologies coming up, so I should talk about those since this is the Anthology Appreciation Hour. And one of them is going to be a new book in our big book series that we do at Vintage, which is going to be a big book of cyberpunk, which I think is going to be edited by Jared Shuren. And then really excited about, we have another anthology that's going to be new stories now that I've practiced on you guys with that. Called Never Whistle at Night, which is going to be Indigenous dark fiction edited by Shane Hawk and Ted Van Elst, and I'm really, really excited about that because they're doing an open call and they've got some amazing people, including Wob from our book. So it's like
I'm so excited.
Technically, that makes it part of the KAU.
Yes. I am so excited. I got like really teary when I saw Wob tweeting about it.
I did too. I think
great. I want really good things for him.
I love him. I cannot wait for the Moon Crest Snow sequel, and now I'm excited to see whatever he comes up with for this, as well as all the people who want it. Tommy Orange is going to be in it. It's like
nice.
So cool.
That sounds awesome.
So those are my anthology brags upcoming, and it's very. I feel like I can properly brag about them because at the moment I'm doing nothing on all of this. It's all the talented editors. I'm just sitting back being like, bring me stuff.
Don't worry, you'll have plenty to do when those stories come in.
I know. This is a false sense of security that I have right now.
I can say that now because I know.
I mean, that's how it is often as an editor, is like, you send your authors off and you're like, wow, this is great. And then they bring you the most magnificent things and you're like, oh, I have to do something now?
Right.
Yeah.
I have to do my job? Oh. And if you're lucky, everyone turns in their stuff in exactly the same week. And it's the week before you're going on vacation.
Always.
Always.
Amazing. What do we have time for more questions? I feel like Katie had some questions for us, but I don't know. Oh, there you are.
Hi.
Popping back in. So the Novel Neighbor, whenever we interview authors and editors, we love to do a few rapid fire questions and then a few this or that questions. So if you all have a few minutes, we'll start with this one. Your favorite season of the year?
Fall.
100%.
Coming up. I think we're all excited.
Yeah.
What's your go-to order at a coffee shop?
This is easy because mine is a black coffee. I'm that person. I'm John Mulaney's dad. So
yeah, I was gonna be like, mine is really boring vanilla, like a latte with at least 2 shots of espresso and at least 2 pumps of vanilla syrup.
It really depends on which coffee shop I'm in and what mood I'm in. Like, I don't have like one order. I've never realized that before. I will say, I'm always excited when I see it on the menu. I love a cortado. You can't get them everywhere, and some places do like a fake one it's not a good scene. But when you get like a good cortado at like a good hole-in-the-wall coffee shop, like there's nothing quite like that.
Awesome. What music are you listening to right now?
Oh, this is embarrassing.
yeah, mine.
All day today, I listen to Star Trek audio, like Star Trek sound, like scores, soundtracks. But yesterday, I listened to Damien Rice, who's one of my favorite artists, who's much less embarrassing.
I actually haven't listened to music in 2 weeks. I go through phases where I'm listening to nothing but KEXP is my internet radio of choice, and they're amazing. Their DJs are so good. But I also then am just like, sometimes I can't handle the auditory input while I'm doing anything else. That happens to me, especially when things are really busy. So I've been in like quiet mode for a couple of weeks. I was on a road trip recently, and we did fall down a Bob Dylan rabbit hole. So that has to be my answer for the moment.
I'm still semi-obsessively listening to Natalie Holt's score for the Loki TV show.
Oh,
I love it. The
It's
like drums. I don't even know how to like.
Yeah.
But like just it's so good. I listened to it so many times.
It's really good. It's great to like work and write to and all of that other stuff. And there's also some really cool songs featured on the show too. So I've been sort of doing that. That's really nerdy answer, but it's a great score.
Awesome. My nerdy answer was going to be the Jonas Brothers. So I think that,
whatever works.
Right? Oh, this is a good one. What book are you bringing to a deserted island?
The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. Ooh. It is always my desert island book because I've read it. Well, that's actually a fandom I don't talk about enough. I have read that book 5 times, and it's a really long book. And I will reread it some more. And I feel like I could be rereading that book for the rest of my life and find something new every time.
A chonky boy is definitely a necessity.
Yeah. I don't know quite which book. I feel like Count of Monte Cristo is a good one because I have a not mild obsession with the Three Musketeers, the quintology. I don't know. The 5 Three Musketeers books, but I've never read the Count of Monte Cristo.
The Three Musketeers franchise.
The franchise. But I've never read Count of Monte Cristo, so that actually, I might just piggyback on your answer, Jen.
It's real good.
Yeah, it's one of those things. That and the Black Count are the 2 books. Like I want to read like those as a pair.
Mm-hmm.
Those are good. I'm trying to. I mean, maybe Jane Eyre is a good possibility because I love that book. It's decently long. I feel like I could also get new stuff out of it each time. I've been wanting to because I just did a road trip through the Southwest, and the last time I did that, prior to this time in 2000, I read Lonesome Dove as I was doing that drive, and I love Lonesome Dove. This time I was actually driving the car, so I couldn't. The prior time I was like 16, and I was just sitting in the passenger seat reading. This time I had to operate a motor vehicle, so I didn't do it. But now I want to reread that book. So if I was suddenly shipped off to a desert island tomorrow, maybe I would bring Lonesome Dove. It's also chonky, so that's
very, yeah.
What's your favorite meal to cook?
Mine is so basic. It's macaroni and cheese. I have a Smitten Kitchen macaroni and cheese recipe that is foolproof as far as I'm concerned. Even when you do it with gluten-free pasta, which I have to do, it's so good. It's like my go-to, like anytime like I'm hosting something, I'm making the mac and cheese. When I'm like having a bad week and it's not the summertime when it's too hot to turn on your oven, I'm making the mac and cheese. Like that is my go-to, no doubt.
My mom invented My mom invented a chicken stew recipe that I really, really, really love. And so this is the worst possible weather for it. So I'm not making it this summer, but in the winter months, I love that chicken stew. It has red currant jelly in it, and that's the secret ingredient. And I really recommend that stew. I recommend you find my mom and get the recipe for her stew. No, I like that stew. Good. Sorry.
I'm like, I have no idea. It's a good question. I'm like, I cook a lot, but I'm blanking because I don't really love cooking. It's something I do because I'm good at it and I don't want to eat out all the time. So yeah, I think I don't have an answer.
Okay. Last rapid fire question. Post-COVID, where's the first place you're going to travel?
Anywhere. I think you know my desperation, Katie. We both have young kids.
Oh, yes. Yeah. COVID with a toddler is, yeah.
I just want to go anywhere that's not here.
Yeah. I really want to get out to Arizona to see my mom's side of the family, and it's not looking great for Thanksgiving right now anyway. So that would be my wish. My COVID management wish is that travel is possible and safe for all of us. By the time we get to November, we'll see what happens.
My fantasy trip would be, I've been trying to study Japanese, which don't ask me to speak any of it, because I think what I have managed to do is learn some characters. Like I can sort of read like hiragana now, and that's where I'm at. But I'd really love to go to Japan and every once in a while be like, oh, I know that one.
That's so satisfying though.
Yeah. It's more Japanese than I knew before the pandemic. So we'll say that. It's gone up, not down. So I'll take it.
Yeah.
Alrighty, and then just a couple of this or that's. Pie or cake?
Oh, that's hard because it depends on the kinds.
Yeah, it's tough, but I think if I had to choose, I would go pie.
Also pie.
Pie, yeah.
City or countryside?
City.
Country.
Is woods countryside? Because like woods is the answer.
Yes. Dogs or cats?
Dog.
Cat.
I love them both, but I have a cat. She's here right now and could be listening, so I'm going to say cat.
That's probably a good answer. Sneakers or sandals?
Sandals.
Sneakers. I'm one of those weirdos who almost always wear sneakers, even with like shorts.
That can look cute. A pair of Converse goes with everything.
Yeah, like I wear the like slip-on sneakers.
Oh yeah.
That I consider like elevated mom shoes.
I probably am also going to go sneakers because anytime if you suddenly have to run in sandals or something like that, like what if you're being chased by dinosaurs? You'd be grateful you're in the sneakers, I guess. So.
It's a fair point.
Fair point. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Beach or mountains?
Mountains. Give me ice any day.
Both. I cannot pick. I want them both. And you can have both of them depending on where you are. So
amazing mountains that lead down to a beach.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's the beach and then the mountains are next to it.
I think I would pick beach though if I absolutely had to choose, but that is horrible because I love both of those things.
Okay, and now the hardest one of the night and also the last one, ninjas or pirates?
Pirates. I understand that they're not acceptable movies to love, but the Pirates of the Caribbean trilogy are like a comfort watch for me. I just rewatched the third one last week because I wasn't feeling well, or the third one. I really love those movies.
I don't know how we feel about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles these days, like as a culture. But as a person, as a child of the 80s and 90s who grew up on it, I'm going to have to go with ninjas.
Well, when the ninjas break in later to kidnap me and Swapna for not choosing them, you'll have the last laugh.
There you go.
You're very concerned, Anna, about who might be listening to your answers here.
Who's watching?
And you're like, is she like in a paranoid fugue state for the entire interview? What's happening?
All the commenters have been very nice and engaging. So
You don't want to mess with cats. Also, I support that choice. I have 2 cats in the house right now, and you're not going to mess with them.
Cats are basically ninjas, so
Yeah, it's true.
yeah, my cat is meowing outside the door right now, and he's probably like, why aren't you letting me in? Alrighty. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Swapna, Anna, and Jenn. This was such a fun event. Make sure to buy your copy of Sword and Stone Table. And if you get it from the Novel Neighbor, you can get a signed book plate and a sticker, which is going to go on my laptop as soon as we finish this. Thank you so much to everybody for joining us today, and have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.